Welcome to the Hollywood Scholar. I'm Jed Morgan, and I just finished watching the newest episode of Orville New Horizons from Unknown Graves. And I did enjoy this episode quite a bit, especially when it came to the interpersonal relationships that were the core of this episode. I do have a few minor issues with it. Some of those are meta issues, some are more script writing issues, but overall I did enjoy it. I think it's probably going to be mid-range for this new season of the Orville, but there's still a lot of great things to love about this episode and the Orville as a whole. A lot of great character work that is done and a lot of progression that is done for the overall story of the Orville, especially when it comes to conflict with the Kalons, which seems to be where this season is going. But before I get any further, there will be some minor spoilers ahead, so spoiler alert. Now, one of the best parts of this episode were the flashbacks, the origin of the Kalons, where they show a particular Kalon going through some pretty heavy abuse from his masters, which just really contextualizes how a species can be driven to mass genocide. And throughout the episode, they're like, hey, what they did was still wrong. It was still fundamentally evil, but at least you can understand it and empathize with them to a certain extent. And I think that was very neatly done. And it showed the evolution of the builders as well, from, this awe of a robot for the first time to this hatred and torture of this creature in not too long of a span of time. I really loved all those flashbacks. I would have been totally fine if this episode was entirely dedicated to the Kalon's rise to power and the overthrowing of the builders. I think that would have been a fascinating exploration and dedicated a little bit more time to the psychology of the Kalons, at least in their infancy. I think that would have been a really neat way to go about it, and culminating in the murder of the builders. I think that would have been fascinating. The rest of the stuff in this episode I did enjoy, but it was really that part that drew me in. I was fascinated by. And then this episode featured a lot of relationship drama, but it never dipped into the realm of CW cheesiness. Like the Lamar relationship, the Claire relationship, they were all very well flushed out, and I could understand where everyone was coming from. It was very neatly done. I do have a major problem with how Kelly tells Claire justifying changing Isaac on a fundamental level to have surgery and equating it to therapy. I do have some problems with that. I do like Claire making that decision. The character would have made the same decision to ask Isaac to undergo the procedure. I think it just should have been a lot more difficult, and she may have given Isaac a speech is like, I'm being selfish. I know what I'm asking you is wrong, but I need to ask you anyway, and realize that there is some more repercussions of coming at it from that perspective. She starts out that way, and then Kelly's just like, oh, it's just therapy, so it's fine. And she's like, you know what? It is fine. I think there should have been a lot more conflict within Claire's character when it came to that portion of the episode. In the end, it set up some really cool stuff. I really love the emotional scene where Isaac is in the simulator talking to Claire, having emotions, expressing emotions. I wasn't sure if the actor playing Isaac was capable of portraying emotions. Like Brent Spiner, for all I love him for, he isn't really great outside of the character of Data. So maybe it was a similar situation where he really just needs to play the robot emotionless creature and not really the empathetic one. But this actor really blew it away, and he had some really great moments in that brief span of emotions. Now, I'm glad that they didn't make that permanent. It would have thrown off the dynamic of the show a little bit. I think that might be something that they should make permanent in the final episode of the season, the series finale per se. But I really enjoyed a lot of those interactions with each other. Now, my favorite moment of the episode was the final conversation between Charlie and Isaac, where Charlie starts to realize that she was wrong and that maybe Isaac does deserve her empathy, as this whole episode is about empathy, about giving the Kalons empathy, about giving Isaac empathy, giving empathy to a backward society that is still very closed-minded. It was all about empathy. And so her evolution has been fascinating to watch over this new season. And it's been set up gradually ever since the very first episode of New Horizons, and her finally giving up her hate, at least towards Isaac, if no one else, Isaac alone, if nobody else in the Kalon race. It was very well done, very neatly done, and her speech about how humanity tries to simplify things is something that I very much agree with and have thought through quite a bit in my own studies, and I think it was very well done. Charlie has become one of my favorite characters of the Orville, despite her recent introduction, and it was just a really great interaction that I very much enjoyed from an emotional standpoint and a character writing standpoint, because she's gone on quite a journey these last few episodes. Now, my biggest problem with the episode is when it came to that matriarchal society in the episode. That was kind of the background of it, the B plot of we're trying to negotiate with this matriarchal species to get them to join in the war with the Kalons. I don't think it was done as well as it was intended to be. Old Star Trek has done this dozens of times, where they take a an issue and inverse it to show the ridiculousness of it. There were matriarchal societies that were explored in TNG, for example, but it was all to show how they were wrong and how backwards they were to think that men were inferior by showing the men as being equal or in certain situations superior, depending on the person's situation involved. TNG did a much better job at it. This one, it felt like it was just an excuse to make jokes at the male's expense. There was quite a few opportunities where they had chances to explore the idea of it a little and show the men being competent. But instead of, gradually introducing them to the concept of men being equal to women, it was very much like, oh yeah, they're stupid. Look, they're just being stupid. And the women who were suddenly given power were abusing the power at every single opportunity and laughing at the men. It's like, are all your men this stupid and slow? Yeah, pretty much. That's not showing the same type of dichotomy that the classic episodes were of true equality. The only time that they even mentioned that men had the same rights were when it came to Ed's sexual independence, his sexual choice. And it really would have been better if throughout the episode that they were being just as competent, even in their servitude roles that they were pretending to fill. But by showing them, portraying them as idiots and clumsy throughout the encounter, it really goes against the idea that this episode was trying to go for. And it really came across as these women who were suddenly given power almost believe that a matriarchal society is superior than an egalitarian one. So it was very conflicting with each other. And I just don't think it was written to the same nuance that it should have been. It was simplified, similar to the Charlie speech at the end of the episode. They were simplifying it far too much, and I think that was very damaging to the idea and the message and the concept that they were going for. It just really wasn't done in any sort of coherent or intelligent manner. But overall, I did really enjoy this episode. I think it's probably mid-range, maybe low range for the new season, but I've loved every single episode of the New Horizons season. I'd have to give this a 7 out of 10. The sexism deal and the therapy excuse really bring it down quite a bit in my estimation, because the show has been known for intelligent writing in the past, but both of those decisions were incredibly unintelligent and portrayed in very unintelligent ways and were just misused to a huge degree when they could have been the emotional backbone of the episode and the core of the character writing, and they just weren't to the same degree that they should. So that's kind of how I feel about this episode, and I still really did enjoy it though. But anyway, that's all I have for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Anon. If you like what I do here and want to see good, compelling stories that Hollywood will no longer give you, check out my book series, Odyssey of a Phoenix, a mythological epic about philosophy, morality, and modern-day mental illness issues. Books 1, Down in Flames, and Book 2, Apocalypse Then, currently on sale. Book 3, Kill the Dark, coming soon.